Sasaki Kojiro saw his error in the final breath before death claimed him. Miyamoto Musashi had already seen his triumph 3 hours before the duel began. There is a war unfolding around you at this very moment, and you are on the losing side. No gunfire, no explosions, just words, looks, and decisions made in fractions of a second. Every conversation is a battlefield where minds collide in ways most people will never perceive. For centuries ago, in the fog-draped mountains of feudal Japan, a single man uncovered the secret to winning this unseen war. His name endures through history not because he possessed the greatest physical power, but because he grasped something extraordinary. Reality is not what your eyes show you. It is what your mind chooses to perceive. And perception can be deliberately shaped. Miyamoto Musashi moved through a world where being deceived meant dying. Where misreading someone's intentions could erase your entire bloodline from existence. Yet across more than 60 encounters where death hung in the balance, he was never once misled, never caught unprepared, never outmaneuvered. But what makes his legacy truly remarkable is this. He did not reach this mastery through raw physical power or quicker hands. He reached it by uncovering the invisible architecture beneath the human mind, the concealed patterns that drive how we think, choose, and expose our deepest motives without ever realizing we are doing it. Today, we walk in his footsteps and discover why the greatest battles are already over before a single blow is struck. Picture the dawn of April 13, 1612. The island of Gonryu sits swallowed in mist, its coastline barely visible through the gray morning light. On that shore stands Sasaki Kojiro, known across Japan as the Swallow Cut, a man whose sword moves too fast for human eyes to follow. He arrived at sunrise, as honor demanded. His blade catches what little light exists. 3 feet of flawless steel shaped by master hands. He is coiled, ready. His mind sharp as the edge he carries. Hours drift by. The sun rises higher. The fog burns away. Still, Musashi does not come. But here is what is actually unfolding beneath the surface. While Kojiro stands on that shore, his frustration mounting, his mind is being sculpted from the inside. Every minute that passes strips away another layer of his composure, his certainty, his inner stillness. By the moment Musashi finally sets foot on that beach, the outcome has already been decided. This is the first law of the invisible war. Time is not a passive force. It is a weapon. And whoever commands its flow commands everything that follows. Look at your own life. The colleague who responds to every message exactly 24 hours later. They are using time to assert psychological control. The salesperson who manufactures deadlines out of thin air. They are turning your sense of urgency against you. The person who shows up precisely 15 minutes late to every meeting. They are conditioning everyone around them to wait, to bend, to orbit their schedule. When Musashi steps off his boat 3 full hours late, he carries no steel blade. Instead, he grips a crude piece of carved wood, an oar he shaped roughly during the crossing. Kojiro laughs. The witnesses exchange confused glances. But Musashi understands something none of them do. The most lethal weapon is not the sharpest blade. It is the shattering of what someone expected to see. In his final work, The Book of 5 Rings, Musashi wrote, "You must understand that there is more than one reality. What people believe to be real and what is actually happening are often completely different things." This is not simply ancient wisdom gathering dust. It is the master key to navigating deception in the modern world. Every single day, people present you with carefully assembled versions of reality. The colleague whose smile never wavers while quietly undermining your work. The salesman who manufactures scarcity where none exists. The politician who offers remedies for the very problems they helped manufacture. They succeed because the overwhelming majority of people see only the surface layer. Musashi trained himself relentlessly to perceive the layers underneath, what he called the true form concealed behind the apparent form. Here is how this looks in practice. You walk into a business meeting. The atmosphere is friendly, professional, cooperative on the surface. But Musashi's eye would catch the invisible tensions running beneath it. Who claims which seat? Who speaks before anyone else? Whose contributions get recognized, and whose disappear into silence. He would be watching the meeting behind the meeting, the one conducted entirely in glances, in pauses, in what is deliberately left unspoken. He would notice that when Sarah from marketing speaks, every person in the room suddenly finds their phone more interesting. He would notice that when the CFO raises budget concerns, the CEO's jaw tightens for just a fraction of a second. He would see that when someone proposes a timeline, 3 people reach for their calendars at once, but 2 of them are not actually checking dates. They are buying themselves time to think. This is not a mystical skill. It is simply learning to observe without layering your own assumptions over what your eyes actually show you. Most people experience the world filtered through their hopes, their fears, and their preconceptions. They see what they expect to find, or what they are quietly afraid of finding, but almost never what is genuinely there. Musashi called this polishing the mirror of perception, patiently removing every smear of distortion until reality can reflect itself back without interference. There is a story about Musashi that most people misread entirely. During one particular duel, his opponent waited and waited for Musashi to settle into a fighting posture. But Musashi simply stood there, loose, unhurried, almost indifferent. His opponent grew more agitated by the moment, cycling between defensive stances, trying to provoke any kind of reaction. Finally, driven past the edge of reason, he threw himself forward in a desperate lunge. Musashi moved aside and closed the duel with a single decisive strike. People call this instinct, or superior speed, but it was something far more deliberate. Musashi had learned to become psychologically invisible. When your mind is perfectly still, completely present to this moment, you broadcast nothing for others to intercept. No tension to exploit. No emotion to manipulate. No rhythm to anticipate. You become like water, without shape until the precise moment shape is needed. This state of psychological invisibility is perhaps the most powerful shield against deception ever discovered. When someone attempts to manipulate you, they are scanning for something to latch onto. Your fears. Your desires. Your insecurities. Your ego. But when your mind resembles still water, their tactics have nothing to grip. Think about the last time someone genuinely got under your skin. Maybe they challenged your work in front of others. Maybe they publicly questioned your judgment. What happened inside your body in that moment? Your breathing shifted. Your shoulders climbed. Your voice may have changed pitch. Color rose in your face. Every single one of these is a signal, raw information the other person can immediately use to recalibrate their approach, to probe deeper into whatever wound they have just located. Now imagine responding instead from a place of genuine inner stillness. Your breath stays even. Your voice remains level. Your posture holds. You receive what is being said without walls going up, process it without defensiveness, and respond from honest curiosity rather than wounded reaction. This is not suppression. This is not denial. It is what Musashi called the mind that does not stick, awareness that does not get snagged in the drama, does not swallow the bait, does not start moving to someone else's rhythm. A cognitive neuroscientist studying decision-making under high pressure has described it this way: when we become emotionally reactive, the prefrontal cortex, the region responsible for rational, strategic thought, functionally goes dark. We become predictable. We become easy to steer. But individuals who sustain psychological equilibrium under stress consistently show activity in the regions associated with pattern recognition and long-range strategic thinking. Research from a behavioral economics professor at MIT reveals something that cuts even deeper. The most effective negotiators are not the ones who argue with the greatest force. They are the ones who remain the most psychologically neutral while quietly harvesting information about what their counterpart actually wants and fears. They win not through aggression but through superior understanding. A former FBI interrogator with 2 decades of experience adds this: the subjects they could never break were not the toughest, not the most defiant. They were the ones who seemed genuinely interested in the questions being asked rather than threatened by them. They transformed every exchange into an opportunity to understand rather than a battle to survive. What modern science is only beginning to map in detail, Musashi worked out centuries ago through pure observation and unrelenting practice. He discovered that emptiness is not absence. It is potential. When your mind becomes genuinely quiet, genuinely present, something extraordinary begins to happen. You start perceiving people's intentions before they have fully formed them. Human behavior is largely patterned. People signal their next move through shifts in breathing, subtle changes in posture, small variations in the rhythm of their speech. But those signals only become visible when your own internal noise stops drowning them out. This is why Musashi spent years practicing what he called no mind, not running through technique during combat, not rehearsing his next move, simply being entirely present to what is actually unfolding. From inside this state, the right action arises on its own, perfectly fitted to the specific moment. In daily life, this translates into something that can change everything. The capacity to respond rather than react. When your manager criticizes you unfairly, instead of immediately defending, you pause. You observe. You see their stress, the pressure they are operating under, their own anxieties playing out through their words. Your response comes not from ego, not from emotion, but from genuine clarity about what is actually happening. But strategic emptiness goes further than simply staying calm. It is about creating space, psychological space, in which truth surfaces on its own. When you are not driving your agenda forward, not fortifying your position, not working to prove anything, people reveal far more than they ever planned to. Musashi understood that most people are made deeply uncomfortable by silence, by open space, by not knowing what is moving behind your eyes. They will rush to fill that vacuum with information, with explanations, with justifications you never once requested. This is precisely why the most skilled therapists, the most effective investigators, the most formidable negotiators often say very little. They construct a container of attentive presence, and people pour themselves into it. Every person you encounter carries an invisible script, a private story they tell themselves about who they are, what they have earned, what threatens them. Skilled manipulators learn to read these scripts and play directly into them. But Musashi went further than that. He learned to perceive not merely what people believed about themselves, but what they were working desperately to conceal, even from their own awareness. The executive who fills every conversation with talk of success but cannot hold eye contact the moment numbers come up. The friend who insists everything is fine but whose laughter sounds slightly hollow. The partner who claims to trust you completely but reaches for your phone the moment you leave the room. These contradictions are not character flaws to judge. They are information to receive. They reveal exactly where someone's authentic self is in conflict with the version they are presenting. And inside that gap live both their real vulnerability and their true intentions. Musashi called this seeing the enemy spirit, understanding not merely what someone is doing, but the deeper architecture of why. What they are hoping to gain. What they are terrified of losing. Here is a concrete example. You are sitting in a salary negotiation. Your manager explains that the budget is stretched thin this year, that patience is needed across the board, that increases simply are not on the table right now. But you observe the new watch on their wrist. The vacation photographs arranged on their desk. The expensive coffee steaming beside their keyboard. The surface story is about financial constraint. The deeper pattern might be about priorities, what the organization actually chooses to spend money on versus what it claims cannot be funded. Or it might be about your manager's own insecurity regarding their authority, their need to maintain control of the narrative, their quiet fear that agreeing to your request sets a precedent they cannot manage. When you can read these deeper layers, your entire strategy transforms. Rather than arguing with the surface story, you address the real concerns underneath it. Rather than pushing against resistance directly, you find the path that offers the least friction while still carrying you exactly where you want to go. There exists in every interaction a moment, a microsecond suspended between what happens and how you respond, where everything remains undecided. Most people blast through this moment without ever noticing it, reacting on autopilot, driven by conditioning or emotion or reflex. Musashi learned to inhabit this space. To stretch it. To make his choices from inside this point of perfect balance. He called it the void between breaths, that instant of absolute stillness before action emerges. In combat, the difference between that stillness and reactive panic was the difference between precision and chaos. In ordinary life, it is the difference between being led somewhere you never chose to go and remaining completely grounded in your own center. This space exists inside every conversation you will ever have. Someone says something that activates something in you, and there is a moment, however compressed, where you are free to choose what comes next. Most people never notice this moment is there. They move directly from trigger to reaction, like a stone bouncing off a wall. But once you learn to recognize this space and settle into it, an entirely different range of responses opens up. Instead of defending, you might ask a question that illuminates what the other person is actually after. Instead of striking back, you might locate common ground that dissolves the conflict before it escalates. Instead of pulling away, you might move closer with honest curiosity about what is genuinely happening. This is what Musashi intended when he wrote about winning without fighting, not the avoidance of conflict, but its resolution at a level so fundamental that external struggle becomes beside the point. But here is what will truly shift something in how you see all of this. Musashi's most profound insight was never about reading other people. It was about reading himself, with such ruthless clarity that external deception simply lost its ability to penetrate. Consider this carefully. Every time you have been deceived, manipulated, or taken advantage of, some part of you already knew. Your intuition sent its signals. Your body registered the dissonance. Your mind noticed the inconsistencies. But you overrode all of it, because seeing clearly would have demanded something uncomfortable, an inconvenient truth, a difficult decision, the loss of something you were not yet ready to release. Musashi came to understand that the person attempting to deceive you is not your true adversary. Your true adversary is the part of your own mind that prefers the comfort of a pleasant lie to the difficulty of an honest truth. In his final years he wrote, "I have defeated many enemies, but my greatest victory was over the enemy within, the part of me that wanted to believe comfortable lies rather than face uncomfortable truths." This is the ultimate secret. The real opponent is never the person in front of you. It is the part of your own consciousness that quietly collaborates with deception, because truth demands change, and change demands courage. Every single day presents you with countless small arenas where this inner combat plays out. When someone tells you precisely what you hope to hear, do you receive it gratefully without examination, or do you look at it honestly? When you feel that quiet wrongness during a conversation, that subtle signal your gut is sending, do you dismiss it or follow it? When your first instinct points one direction and your rational mind argues another, which voice do you actually trust? Most people abandon their inner knowing the instant it becomes inconvenient. The job offer that seems impossible to be genuine, but you want it so badly that the warning signs become invisible. The relationship where every word is right but something underneath does not feel settled, yet you are tired enough of being alone that you persuade yourself the feeling is just fear. The investment opportunity that promises returns that cannot be real, but you want to believe in the shortcut badly enough that you silence your own skepticism. Musashi's path does not lead to suspicion. It does not lead to paranoia. It leads to becoming so genuinely honest with yourself, so clear in what you are actually perceiving, so comfortable sitting with what is unknown, that external manipulation simply finds no surface in your mind to take hold of. He called this the courage to see, the willingness to look directly at what is real, even when it is not what you hoped for. Even when it means making changes you would rather postpone. Even when it means acknowledging failures you would rather rewrite. The most sophisticated thing Musashi ever understood was not about defeating opponents outside himself. It was recognizing that deception from outside is only ever possible because of the deception we permit inside. You can only be misled about others to the precise degree you are willing to mislead yourself. If you are honest about your own motivations, you will recognize mixed motives in others the moment they surface. If you can acknowledge your own capacity for self-serving reasoning, you will see through it immediately when someone else deploys it. If you know your own patterns of avoidance and denial from the inside, other people's smoke screens become transparent the instant they go up. This is why Musashi spent as much time mapping his own mind as he spent studying technique. He understood his own psychological terrain so completely that he could recognize instantly when someone was attempting to exploit ground they assumed he had never explored. Think back to your last serious misjudgment of someone. The information required to read the situation correctly was almost certainly there. You simply did not want to take it in. Perhaps acknowledging who that person really was would have meant ending something you were not ready to end. Perhaps accepting the reality of the situation would have meant admitting you had been wrong for a long time. The road to never being deceived does not run through greater suspicion of others. It runs through greater honesty about yourself. When you stop deceiving yourself, other people's deceptions become visible without any special effort. On that misty morning at Ganryo Island, when Musashi stepped off his boat carrying a wooden sword, he was not simply confronting Sasaki Kojiro. He was demonstrating something that does not belong to any particular century. The deepest strength does not live in your weapons or your tactics. It lives in your willingness to see reality exactly as it is, not shaped by what you wish were true, and not distorted by what you fear might be. That same morning is arriving for you, right now. Every moment hands you the choice between clarity and comfortable confusion, between wisdom and wishful thinking, between full presence and the easier drift of distraction. The sword Musashi truly mastered was never forged from steel or wood. It was made entirely from awareness, the kind that moves through illusions so cleanly that truth simply reveals itself, without force, without struggle. That awareness already lives inside you. It has been patient while you learned to listen to everything else. Your fears, your desires, your conditioning, your assumptions. But now you understand. The way to never be deceived is not to outthink everyone around you. It is to become so present, so honest with yourself, so fearlessly attentive, that deception cannot find anywhere in you to take root. In the end, Musashi's deepest teaching has nothing to do with combat or strategy. It is about returning to your own most fundamental intelligence, the part of you that has always been able to distinguish between what is genuinely real and what is merely a story being told. That intelligence is your real sword. And unlike anything forged from steel, it does not dull with use. Every challenge you face is a chance to polish it sharper, to carry it with greater steadiness and precision. The war for your mind is happening right now. The question was never whether you would be part of it. The only question is whether you are ready to win.